This
Right, recording is in progress. So welcome to Wisdom's Chats, where the recording is in progress. And I've got no idea what you're talking about this morning, but I think it's something to do with individuals or being individualistic or, being part of a collective or, Wisdom's Chats. We talk about all sorts of interesting things. So Lee, you better unravel that one and see if you can get us on the right track, whether it be together or as individuals. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, so I think Jasper doesn't realize that he prompted this discussion. And it was really related to how much are we independent and unique and individual in our thinking and in our actions. And how much are we swayed or moved or subconsciously, unconsciously connected to the greatest social influence through whether it's media or simply our peer group or just the world in general, this, as you say, this collective that sort of impinges itself onto us. And because we are herd animals, that we, or at least group animals, let's put it that way, that we are pulled into those understandings. And I was thinking about an example from when I was growing up. I was reflecting on it recently because of the petrol price or the oil price. Well, certainly the petrol price in South Africa is astronomically ridiculous. We are, paying so much tax on it that it's, it really makes it very, very difficult. But what's amazing to me is in my 50s, we still have oil, because when I grew up in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, the oil supply in the world was diminishing so drastically that we had like 10 years supply if we were lucky. And I, as a young person, as a young girl, I was completely influenced by that. I think maybe, I honestly did worry that our world was going to fall apart. Everything was going to grind to a halt because there was going to be no more oil. And that thought, that fear was completely planted in my brain. And it was very deliberate in order for these cartels to form and to drive the oil price the way that they wanted to. And it was a lesson for me later on in life when I realized that to question agendas. As you know, I am more than likely to be the person opposite end of the spectrum to Trevor, to dutifully follow what other people say. So I have to work especially hard to question authority and to, highlight, does this actually gel? And unfortunately, this, people coming in with their agendas and us being swayed and influenced by them is an ongoing challenge, and social media has made it easier for those in those positions. I think about the racist, the divisions between races that the Guptas tried to infiltrate into South Africa so that we would be pulled apart and white monopoly be blamed for the problems in South Africa. So yeah, we do have to question, because I think we're more influenced than we realize. But of course, and I think Thabiso is going to be the champion of choice, I'm guessing. But I do, at the end of the day, I want to believe that I am still me and I still have a choice and I can still make decisions so long as I am paying attention to the signs.
Question is whether the signs are telling you the truth or not. So, and who knows in this world. So we have to go across to Mr. Conspiracy Theory amongst us. So Jasper, it's going to be over to you.
I was really hoping you get a clue there from Lee. She specifically mentioned Tabiso. Then you jump it on me. I was hoping to first learn from Tabiso there something.
No, she mentioned you first. She said it was all your fault you're talking about this morning. So, yeah.
Yeah, so after that very passionate explanation of the oil, I'm still not sure what the topic is. So I will take it that the topic is about individuals versus the collective. And are we influenced? And the answer is yes, we are definitely influenced. None of us are an island, although Trevor loves his islands. But then as soon as he tells his story of his islands, he starts telling you who he wants with him on the island. So nobody wants to stay alone and be just his own company. And I think that's the great thing about human beings, that through our senses, what we hear, what we see, what we smell, what we experience, and like Leah said, you know, if you have an emotional experience or a strong input at the time when you were emotionally vulnerable, I can remember myself, I was about, about 14, 15, when, you know, we went through a stage here in South Africa that we're alone against the whole world, and the war. There was at one stage a lot of public media about, you know, the effects of an atom bomb and how it can wipe out nations. And I think it was at the height of the Cold War between Russia and America where these things were prevalent. And you have this almost helpless thing in you that, so what can I can do nothing about it. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I'm so young, and I'm not going to see the rest of my life, and I will never be able to marry and have kids. And you know, you play all these scenarios out in your life, and here we are, old men today, with a young woman and a young boy there on the opposite side of the screen. But we've survived, and we've survived the oil crisis. We've survived the atom bomb. We've survived whatever else the life will throw at us, and now we will survive COVID. But that we are cannon fodder for the media is a fact. And so the challenge now is, what do you allow yourself to be programmed into? And it takes a lot of self-discipline to go through the self-programming that, you know, Trevor and most of us have gone through, with your choice of what you read, with your choice of what you listen to, with your choice of who you associate with. And I think when Lee started with the introduction, I just made a side note there that we are all probably programmed on the one hand, but in the end we have all trained our inner guide. Trevor referred to it as his gut feel. And we are all relying now on our inner guide to guide us through situations. Now, what does that inner guide of you do? And it's only as good as all the inputs that you've put in over years, and that has been proven to work for you. Now, the conventional wisdom is fight or flight. So when something happens, choose to fight it or choose to run away from it. But I want to add a third one. I want to say fight, flight, or stand. And I think stand is sometimes the most difficult. When everybody's trying to convince you that this is going to be the end of it, and you refuse to fight, but you also refuse to flight. And you just stand and you just carry on with whatever you've decided to be busy with. And, you know, if I think of all the fun shows, I like to watch some of these magic shows, but you know, it's smoke and mirrors, and they conjure up stuff, but they can make it so real. And I was also in Disney World with some of these virtual animated rides and stuff like that, where you sit still in a chair, but it's coming at you, and you feel like you're going to fall or whatever. And I think most of life is like that. It's what do you call it? Images. It's conjuring up scenarios that have no substance. And if we allow ourselves to constantly fight or flight, we will be totally exhausted, and we will never be able to come to our full potential. So yeah, so I want to throw in the mix, and I see Trevor have already played with the words. So call it fight, flight, or freeze. But for freeze, for me, is doing nothing, whereas stand is almost just hold your ground, let you not be swayed by the whole thing. So yes, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Jasper. So we've lots of F's and S's and things in there. So yeah, the question is whether you'll be swayed by that at all. So Ed, let's get across to you next and find out, are you the influencer or the influencee, independent or otherwise?
Oh, I'm most definitely independent. Now, I hope you've all got your towel with you today. Have we got our towel with us? Okay. You should do. Oh, well done. Yeah, excellent. Because you know it's International Towel Day. And for those of you that don't know the relevance of that, it's to celebrate Douglas Adams and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, you know, not that I actually belong to any groups whatsoever. But anyway, that's by the by. I thought it was fascinating what Lee said, because I remember the whole thing about oil going to run out. Interestingly, she blames it on a conspiracy by the oil companies to boost the oil price up. That we've you know now not run out of oil. I see it completely differently. That actually the potential oil crisis drove innovation and exploration and extraction, and we found more oil. What drives the oil price up is actually taxes. Almost all the price of petrol, etc., is tax. The actual price of oil is something completely different. And we have, because we opened up the North Sea and found oil in the underneath the North Sea. We opened up huge oil drilling under the Arctic Ocean. So it drove innovation. But I like to think of myself as that man in Robert Frost's poem, you know, the road not taken. And at the end, he talks about there a fork in the wood, and he takes the path less well trodden. But of course, you're still taking a path. You're still following what someone else has done. And I think that's the same. Even though we think we might be individuals and making choices, we're still following paths other people have laid. After the tearing up my notes thing, I haven't made very detailed notes, and I put down desert surgeon and Dartmoor, and I'm desperately trying to think what I meant by that. And a lot of us blame social media for influencing us. We've been influenced forever. I don't know whether you know the little conundrum about a car that got stuck on a train crossing, and in the car was a surgeon and the surgeon's son. The car got hit by a train. The ambulance turned up. The surgeon was dead. The son was desperately injured, rushed him to hospital. He's wheeled into the theatre. The surgeon's just about to operate and says, "I can't operate, that's my son." And almost 99% of people can't solve that problem because they think a surgeon is a man. they don't think a surgeon can be a woman, which is how incredibly ingrained some of our pathways are. Even now, when there are plenty of female surgeons, we still think of a surgeon as a man. And we perhaps think of a nurse as a woman. So anyhow, and then, so that's that. I like to think of myself as being individual and making different choices from everyone else, but I still have my dessert after my main course. How many people eat their dessert before their main course? Very few, I should imagine. And then Dartmoor, I mentioned this before, I took a friend of mine on Dartmoor, which is a big expanse of open land in the southwest of England. It's about the same size as the whole island of Singapore. And I took him on there because he wanted to go camping. We were going to go, you can wild camp on Dartmoor, and we were going to camp overnight. And he was like, didn't want to do it on his own, so I went with him. And I took him to this beautiful little wood. Strange enough, when I took my daughter to that wood, she said, oh, it's like a scene from Disney. I said, no, the wood was there first. Disney stole the scene from nature. And I think we get influenced by films too much to be so. Anyhow, we went to see this wood, and you get there by this quite well-trodden path. Then we passed through the wood. Then I wanted to take him next to the highest point on Dartmoor. And the way where we were, there was no footpath there. It goes from the other direction. So I just headed up the side of the valley and across the moor. And this guy was freaked out by that because he'd never, ever been, he lived close to London. He'd never been off a footpath. He'd either been on a road or a pavement or a footpath. He had never, ever crossed a piece of land without a recognized path. And it totally changed him because he suddenly realized he had always followed a recognized path. He'd left school, he'd got a job, he'd done what his parents expected him to do, he got married, he had kids, all that sort of stuff. Worked 9 to 5, got drunk at the weekends. Whatever it was, he'd always followed a path. And I think when we realize we're always, bunda bashing, when we realize we always follow a path, we can then fight against it. But it's incredibly hard to do because of the surgeon problem. We have all those things ingrained into us by our mothers, by films, by books, by our peers, by everyone else. And it's very, very, very hard to break free. So those are my thoughts, and I'm going to have my dessert before my pizza. Oh, that's the other thing. Some people think I'm a heretic because I have chips with my pizza.
There's just no accounting for taste, is there? Yeah, well, Trevor, the road less traveled, perhaps not.
That's why I like it. Chips and pizza and a bit of tomato sauce on the side is good for me, but he probably won't have the tomato. Oh, he does have tomato sauce. Is it vegan?
Yeah, and I have vegan mayonnaise as well.
Pigs out of it.
Vegan mayonnaise on the pizza, tomato sauce on the chips.
All right, let's go down this road. Let's flip the whole discussion. So that's why I did that fight, flight, freeze, fork, flip. I think we've got all the Fs there almost before someone tells us what to do. But I'm going to go back to my first comment. And it's clear to me in listening to all the news because I am up early in the morning and I'm floating through a variety of news channels. I just love to get what different points of view are coming in from all over the world. And it's clear, we're all happy to be manipulated in the direction that we want to move in. And so it's quite simple that if you don't have a really strong emotional reaction to something that comes up on the news, or it doesn't motivate you to tears, which is why I thought Edward was bringing his towel out. I thought he was going to tell us a really sad story, but he didn't. I'm also concerned about the story because he thinks that Hansel and Gretel came from nature, where in actual fact, Hansel and Gretel, that story was first. And Disney World was here long before anyone ever was. And I believe that narrative. It's how I want to be manipulated and influenced. So don't try and tell me anything else. But I was actually thinking about this and how we are influenced. I watched the CNN guys. I watched them when Trump was on board and what they did then, and now to see them against Fox and Fox against them, and it's incredible how groups of people follow who and what they want to follow, and they completely disregard that information that goes against where they believe they are comfortable. And so it's got something to do with the status quo. I think, I used to think status quo was the majority of people were blooming stupid. I now know that there are hundreds of thousands of status quos out there with dozens or hundreds of thousands of people, all with different mindsets. And you know what it is? It's the saying of birds of a feather flock together. That's what it is about. People who are comfortable with people who think in exactly the same way they are. And that's why I like my little island. I'm happy to get all the people that I like on that island, which is one, with a book, and then I'm fine. But listen, you know what? I've got to. My wife has got to be there too, because I need my pizza and chips and tomato sauce. Who else will look after that if I don't have my wife around? So maybe it's an island for two. And then, of course, there's my granddaughter. Okay, now, well, let's leave it to the rest of you to work on. But I think we're manipulated in the direction that we actually are comfortable to be manipulated in.
Don't know which direction to go in after that. I'm not being manipulated at all. But I think I do have to go across to Thabisa next, because we haven't influenced him yet.
Well, I think that, the pandemic has actually created a collectivism mindset, us versus them dynamic, and the us being, the guys, the government, and just authority figures, decision makers, and just everyone who is into this propaganda, because propaganda is everywhere, I don't think that the individual exists anymore. I think that the collective, the group is more important than the individual nowadays, and because I'm like a person who likes history, and I read a lot about Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia. It's definitely what I'm seeing right now. I think that, this collective mindset is actually, it is actually affecting people's capacity to actually think on their own, So they need the president, for example, to actually speak before they can actually do something, Jesper talked about control, and I think that's what this is about, it is about mobilizing people and, systems. I'm just tired. I'm just really tired of masks, I'm just tired of just everything, I think that masks are very oppressive, and it's like they're trying to keep us quiet, So I really don't like that, and pandemic thing is just trying to induce, a mass psychosis, it is suggestive programming. It is typical, Ivan Pavlov and B.F. Skinner, we are just being conditioned, you know, and programmed. That's what I think this pandemic thing is about. And it actually alienates, you know, it separates the individual from, you know, the group, you know, because to be honest with you, I'm not really scared of, you know, the coronavirus or the illness. My problem is the guards, because they want to enforce their dominance and all that, you know. I think that we are in trouble because right now people feel like they can actually dictate what we can do, you know. And I think that when people are actually passive in terms of their cognitive abilities and to actually derive decisions for themselves, you know, nihilism becomes a real thing, you know, and people get controlled much more easier. I think the next step now is just to get people to actually think that microchips are cool, you know, and it's going there, you know. We're going to have things planted because we're going to have things planted in our bodies because these days we don't have something that can actually, you know, we don't think for ourselves. Let me just say that, you know, this pandemic thing, for me, you know, I don't have the answers. I don't think it's credible, you know. I think that there's something behind the scenes, you know. It is, this thing is just strange and not credible, you know. And maybe it's because I'm exposed to a lot of history, but I just see Hitler, I just see Stalin, but on a large scale, you know. I see Pavlov, I see B.F. Skinner. That's what I see when I look at this thing, you know. And surely, maybe it exists, you know. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist and that it's not important, but I just think that we are in trouble. That's what I think, because now, because of this collective group, and you know, this collective someone always, you know, controls this collective, you know. So that's the problem, you know, when this person is actually controlling the group to actually do something, then we lose that identity, you know. I just feel that autonomy nowadays is something that doesn't exist, you know. And I just feel that we are in a dangerous zone, you know. And that's why I'm always so against, you know, being passive. I think that you should actually think for yourself. You know, with my EP, I actually created a song called Thought Criminal. It was because I was so frustrated because people don't think independently, you know. They don't ask questions. They don't find out answers for themselves, you know. And I think this pandemic has just perpetuated everything, you know. The individual in today's world doesn't exist. And something we need to come within, you know. Everything comes from within, and the world you what to do, for example, you know. So I think I'll just end it there. Thank you, Ivan.
Great, thanks, Toby. So yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. Question everything. I think that's the question. Do you or don't you? So I'm going to just go down the route of molecular gastronomy because I like that. And Heston Blumenthal says question everything. So if you don't know who Heston is and you don't know what molecular gastronomy is, well, you need to question it. So yeah, I think that's the key. And I think so many people just simply don't question. They just have information thrown at them and they believe it. And I mean, it just blows my mind with some of the reactions that I've seen over this last year with this whole pandemic nonsense. And well, pandemic's not nonsense, but the nonsense around the pandemic, let's rather put it that way. So And clearly you can just see people just don't think. You know, I mean, my daughter, some of her friends at the beginning of this, you know, they were absolutely paranoid, but it was okay if you were with people that you knew. So, you know, just don't think. So yeah, I think that's what we try and do. That's what we try and encourage, and that's what Wisdoms is all about. Think. But maybe we should add another element to that. Question. So that's what it comes down to for me. Just don't accept things on face value all the time, because a lot of the time you're being fed a line, and that line has just got a hidden agenda behind it. But so Jasper was the conspiracy theorist. I'm just his backup. So I'll take it from there. All right. So I think the chat box has gone completely down the toilet. So we'll have to see if we have a topic for tomorrow. Anybody's got a suggestion?
Yeah, I would like us to talk about chips.
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 with or without tomato sauce?
With definitely, depends on what, if you'd like chips with tomato sauce in your head. Because I'm fascinated by, and Edward's favorite person, Elon Musk, this Neuralink company that is manufacturing chips to put into your brain. And the idea, you know, it's all very, it has a very important purpose for dealing with brain diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's and various other things like that. So it's ostensibly to be a health tool, but it does increase performance. And so the military are, of course, looking at it. And Elon Musk's purpose behind it, well, we can talk about it tomorrow, but let's talk about chips. Chips in the brain.
Yeah, control
us, or are we going to control it?
Okay, chips, watch out. We're going to find something on that tomorrow anyway, but yeah, have a good one, folks, and we'll see you then. Go well.
Bye.